Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the stream, to the second ever Mystic Forge podcast. I am the Mystic Forge, joined by, as always, Vigilant Seagull.
Yo, I'm Vigilant Seagull. Some of
All
you
right.
may know me, some of you probably don't. That's all right.
All right, how are we doing this week?
Well, we're doing okay. It seems like one news story has kind of covered the entirety of the news cycle.
Yeah, for sure. The Activision thing, it's kind of
Right.
like a bomb as well. Because usually when something like that happens, there's like a million rumors months ahead of time before an acquisition happens. And this one, at least from my point of view, it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I know. They did a surprisingly good job of like keeping that under wraps, which is just incredibly weird for something that huge, but I kind of wonder if the whole sex abuse allegations kind of helped keep it under wraps until they just dropped it.
It was all planned.
Yeah, it was
No.
all planned from the
Yeah.
beginning.
No, but
Microsoft planted those accusations so they could buy it cheap.
but I guess before we actually get into the news, what's going on in the world of Vigilant Seagull? What are we playing? What are we doing? Anything going on?
Well, I have been kind of on a hiatus for myself, just because work's been a little stressful.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from that, I've mostly been playing Pokemon, Brilliant Diamond, and waiting for the Pokemon game to drop this week, because, I'm super stoked for that. It looks amazing.
Man, I've
I
been
know
out
you're
of
not
the
a huge,
Pokemon loop for
I
quite
was
a
gonna say,
while.
I know you're not a huge Nintendo fan, so I don't know how much you've been paying attention, but the
I
next
think-
game looks sick as hell.
Yeah, I think Pokemon is like the only Nintendo franchise I really got into back in the day. I think the last one I've played must have been X and Y, which is quite a
Too
long time ago.
It's not that bad though. It's only like 2 game cycles.
I mean, sure, but still, I feel like there's been so many. Like, there's the 3D now. There's been like Pokemon Let's Go. There's Pokemon Sword and Shield, I guess. There's probably a bunch of other Nintendo 3DS ones that I missed.
I mean, Nintendo dropped production on the 3DS, so they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, but again, the last one I bought was X and Y on the 3DS. So
Sure,
did
so
they
I guess
do anything after X and Y on DS?
It would have been the Gen 3 remakes. It would have been
remakes.
Yeah, it would have been Gen 7. So that was like the Hawaii island that they had going. So they had 2 different versions of that.
What was the name for that one?
Sun and Moon.
Oh,
so it was
yeah.
Pokemon Sun and Moon, then Pokemon Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, which was like a direct story sequel. Mm-hmm. And then it was Pokemon Let's Go, which was a remake of Red and Blue, because we didn't have enough of those in the world. And then I think finally Sun and Moon or Sword and Shield came out. So the great scheme of things, it's not that far behind, I guess, even though it is like 4 years maybe at this point.
Yeah, I still don't understand why there's not a Pokemon MMO yet. It seems like made for it.
Well, like, that was the cool thing about Sword and Shield, right? Is they kind of set it up to be what a Pokemon MMO could potentially actually be. So I think they're slowly evolving to that point. I just don't think they're quite there yet.
Yeah, I can see why not, in the sense that an MMO would probably last at least a decade.
Right.
I mean, many popular MMOs last more than a decade, so I don't think they're willing to give up the, yearly to bi-yearly sales of a Pokemon game for an MMO. Yeah, I don't think they want to go down that road.
Yeah, when your games are basically guaranteed to sell millions, I think it does kind of behoove you to just release a new game every year, which I guess is what Call of Duty decided was the action they wanted to take, right?
Yeah.
Now we see where they're at. What have you been playing? Just Siege, or not Siege?
Yeah,
but...
actually, it's been a bit all over the place. I've been catching up on a lot of my backlog. I've been playing some Watch Dogs, getting into that series. But yeah, I've actually the last 2 months, I've been playing more Rainbow Six Siege, and then recently now got into Rainbow Six Extraction, which surprised me a little bit on how good it actually is. I fully expected it to be like a standalone DLC pack. I was totally fine with that. It's definitely more than that. It's like the DNA of Siege is definitely there, but it has, at least to me, an interesting enough progression loop to keep going. It's honestly a really difficult game, which surprised me. way more difficult than I expected.
Yeah, I
And
have a
yeah,
lot of people.
they promised support for at least a year, I think, or 2 years. So as long
Ain't
as
too
that
bad.
support is good, should be good.
Certainly no hope. It's surprising Pokemon isn't a gacha yet. It fits perfectly with Catch 'em All. Yeah, they do have a gacha game. It's called Pokemon Masters EX. It's on the phone,
Oh
and you
yeah, that's
actually,
right.
yeah, you get Pokemon waifus that you need to try to unlock and stuff. So they had something else totally different. I don't know how well it did though, because I'm playing it. Like it was worse than I thought. Like I'm
That's
playing
right.
it. Like it
Yeah.
is the one mobile game I've been playing for more than like 2 weeks, and whenever you need to do like a co-op thing with somebody online, it's a fucking desolate wasteland. There's nobody online playing this game, so I have no idea how well it went.
Aren't most Pokemon waifus like teens?
Well,
Or am I wrong?
you're not wrong. I mean, I guess the idea, right, is that younger people are supposed to be playing it. So, like,
Oh
a
god.
teen having a teen as a waifu isn't
Yeah, I guess
as
so.
creepy as, like, 31-year-old Vigilant Seagull over here rolling for Cynthia over and over again.
See, that argument would make sense if like you couldn't make an account if you were 18 plus.
Yeah, what's your
Yeah.
18? Your account's just
It
deleted. You're
deleted. It's like,
done.
nope, this is not for you anymore.
This is the first time I've had to lie about my age going younger on something.
Yeah. True. Man.
Yikes. Anyway,
Mhm.
Absurdity, no hope. If you want some Pokemon Gotcha, they got you covered on that already.
Yeah, I think there's plenty, even Pokemon Go still going, You can still
Yeah,
spend a stupid amount of money on that.
I know people that have. I don't know if they still are, because the people I know that were like super into it got really scared of COVID. So I don't know if they've even left their house
Yeah, I
for.
think for most people, COVID kind of shut that game down a little bit. They had some what do you call it? Like they introduced some stuff to deal with COVID, but then recently they like removed them even. And it's like it's not over. Come on, guys.
Right, I think they removed it, and I think they ended up putting some of it back because I think the people were complaining about it. Like, hey, it was really nice not having to actually trespass on people's property to
Yeah,
spin this
not only
thing. Can you
that,
put
the
it
game
back?
was just legit better. It was like, oh,
Right.
the things you added were actually things which they should have been there from launch. But yeah,
Oh, absurdity. Anyway, fighting games demand a lot of training to be good. Hey, we're not to that yet. We'll get there.
yeah. So yeah, I guess since it's only podcast number 2, let's repeat it. The structure is going to be, I guess, first a little small talk. Lube each other up a little bit.
Can we not
Then
use that?
we'll do some, what happened the last 2 weeks in gaming, or I guess in news in general, if you want to talk about that. Just pick a couple things out that are interesting to us, or something to talk about, and then we get into the main topic, which today is going to be: are fighting games actually harder to learn than other games? Which I think is going to be a fun topic because we don't agree.
We don't. Where's Beaver at so we can rub that in
Yeah,
his face so we don't agree?
yeah, he's probably playing Dead by Daylight. Anyway, so let's get into the news. So what do we do first? I guess we'll just get the big one out of the way.
Yeah.
Microsoft is being hungry and just buys Activision Blizzard. For how much was it? Like 80,
No.
68 billion?
Yeah. It was like 68 points, $68.7 billion, and they use the
Yeah.
term all cash, but I don't know like what the I don't know if that legitimately means somebody walked in with like 30 briefcases filled with dollar bills, or if it means like they actually handed them a money transfer or something for it instead of just trading like, here's some
Yeah.
Microsoft stock for
Yeah,
your
I guess
Activision
the other way
Blizzard
would be
stock.
stocks, or maybe someone's like, "Look, I'll give it to you in Ethereum coins."
I have a timeshare in Florida that I can give you for
Yeah,
some of your company.
I have 5 islands for 3 of them. Something like that. Yeah, it's like, first of all, yeah, the number is just that unfathomable amount of money. You know, like we're
I
we're,
think
we're
it was
working for a paycheck, and they're like, "Yeah, fuck it."
like
It's like,
must be nice to be rich, right? I think it's like probably, I don't know. I was trying to look at a list. I think it was like 3 or 4 and the biggest like media acquisitions behind
Hmm.
like Disney buying Fox and some other major one that I can't quite recall right now. It might have been AT&T buying WB or something like that. Um, so yeah, it's up there as like one of the major media
Hmm.
purchases. I don't know if it's gonna quite have the impact on the world that like Disney buying Fox would have. Um, but it's definitely gonna impact the gaming world at least.
I mean, impact,
In
I think
exclusive
for
NFT.
sure. I think for sure an impact. You have to keep in mind, at least from what I remember, I think the top selling games in 2021 were like Call of Duty Vanguard and Call of Duty Black Ops, whatever.
Right.
So think about that. The two, I think it was the two best selling. Maybe it was in a certain genre or whatever. I don't know for sure exactly where I got that number from, but I remember hearing that both the last two Call of Duties were in the top sellers last year. Like that alone is like for all games in an entire year. That's for a game that's supposedly not doing that well
Yeah, I
anymore.
know,
You
right?
know, that's
All
like,
I've ever heard about it is complaints, and yet it's still game of the year.
yeah, I think Call
So
of Duty is in one of those places. It's kind of like FIFA. Like nobody in the gaming sphere actually talks about it, but it's
right.
still like one of the most selling franchises ever. Because anyone who isn't into the gaming
All those
sphere
dirty
but does have a
casuals.
console, you know, they just buy it, you know, or mom buys
Right.
it.
Right. No, one thing that I didn't even think about, like honestly, when I got the news, the first thing that was on my mind was, wow, Activision Blizzard's getting out of their sexual harassment like
Oh yeah,
fupa. And like literally until the next day when I saw that Sony's stocks took a huge hit, like the biggest hit they've taken since the 2008 crash, I was like, oh yeah, I guess this would really really hurt Sony's prospects, I guess, if
yeah.
Microsoft decides to be super exclusive with everything.
Yeah, Call of Duty for a while now has been associated with PlayStation. So
Right.
that's a rough one, you know. That is a rough one. So thank God crossplay exists now, huh?
Right. Seems this purchase hasn't been allowed by the authorities yet. Could be antitrust. I don't know where they're at along those lines. They said it's going to take an entire year for things to go through, and the way people are talking, like they haven't even brought up like the government's involvement in it. So I don't know if it's even on the government's radar at this point. I feel like if Microsoft had tried to buy Sony, the government would definitely step in then and be like, no, 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 no,
Yeah, that's
no.
so I think there's two angles to this to talk about. I think one is going to be what is the impact of this deal on Activision Blizzard, a company that has been in the news with a bunch of problems, games in general not doing too well, or even if they do well, developers just being like, hey, just help Call of Duty, what the fuck, you know?
Right,
And at the same time, you know, like, how is this going to be in the industry as a general? You know, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? You know, so I guess we'll tackle number one. What do we think this is going to do to Activision Blizzard itself? So I'm kind of on two minds of it in the sense that, like, you know, Activision Blizzard not doing too hot.
right,
Games itself, quality wise, at least most people just seem to be complaining all day. World of Warcraft, people just leaving in droves for Final Fantasy. You know, Overwatch basically gone, I guess.
right,
You know, even Call of Duty, even though it still sells, like
right.
nobody's taking it serious as a, you know, as a
I
heavy
mean,
hitter anymore.
there's even been I don't even know if they have like a true competitive scene yet because I know there was some uh like they apparently with Call of Duty you're supposed to have X amount of game modes you can play in the competitive scene.
Yeah,
And the newest one launched with like 2 out of the 3 or whatever. And they were talking about making Warzone that third, but people were not going for that.
yeah,
So it's like, I don't know. I think overall, this is going to be the best thing that could have ever possibly happened to Activision Blizzard because they were in just so deep at that point.
yeah,
But by that token, I don't know. I love Microsoft, don't get me wrong, but they have a shitty track record of buying something and then like not doing something with it or just harvesting what they want from it and just deleting everything else like they did with Nokia back in the day
yeah.
of
That
Windows
that's
Phone.
that's been Microsoft's MO for competition for a long time. It's just like we'll buy you, and then we'll, you know, poof, it's gone. You know,
Right.
they've done this a million times already. They they still to this day, even though there's like, European laws against it now, they still try to push their browser, which, like they aren't supposed to, but they still keep doing it, in every way they can imagine. But yeah, is it worse than, Bobby Kotick? I don't know.
Right. And I mean, that is one thing. Apparently, is the employees that have started like the move to get things changed are still kind of worried, right? Because they're like, we don't know if we're just going to get lost in the shuffle of this whole thing, or if Microsoft is even going to actually fix anything.
Yeah, I think from the employer level, you got to keep in mind whenever an acquisition like this happens, 9 out of 10 huge layoffs are incoming. That's always the case. Microsoft is going to look at what performs, what doesn't, what are we going to do. They're just going to slash a bunch of projects that don't make sense, and move it towards, where they think the goal is. And that's, there's people are going to lose their jobs for sure. I think it's a bit more difficult with the whole, shit that's going on with Activision Blizzard. So are they going to get removed management as well? You really don't know. We're not in a position to know that shit.
Right.
But that's,
I mean, one of the top concerns was like, what's going to happen with Bobby Kotick, I think is how you pronounce his last name.
Yeah.
What's going to happen with him? Like, and the strong rumor now is I don't know if it's been confirmed or not, but word is he's going to step down, which is great. But like, usually when a company is that corrupt, it runs way deeper than just the CEO, right? And I guess the good news is Microsoft is a company with a very, very long history that hasn't had any kind of situation like this come to the public eye. So things might just be better there because the culture is already better. So depending on how much Microsoft actually takes hold, I think it could end up well in that regard of like the sexual harassment and everything.
Yeah, true. So for all they could just be like, all right, we'll just plant a new manager and, the rest stays and shit just continues, right? Like changing a business culture. I mean, it's technically not difficult. Just, get rid of every shithead, but, like it's not always that easy. Sometimes even shitheads have certain knowledge, certain, experience, certain whatever that you can't just get rid of. So,
or in the case
it's complicated shit,
Right. Or like Bobby, if you do get rid of them, they're still going to walk away with millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And the person taking a spot, or maybe not one taking a spot, but someone who's going to take over his responsibilities, I mean, they're going to earn millions as well.
Right.
Because that's the job, like, that's not going to change.
Sony should buy Nintendo in response. No, they fucking shouldn't. You leave Nintendo alone, Sony.
Yeah. Didn't someone mention that with the whole thing? Like, oh, Nintendo's just doing their own thing and, they don't give a shit.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Nintendo's kind of had that. It seems like they've kind of had that mentality since the Wii days, right? Like, I think the GameCube was their final real foray into the console wars.
Yeah.
And it didn't go well for them. So they're just like, all right, we're just going to do our own thing and be Nintendo and be fine with that.
Mm-hmm. Instead of games, we'll do toys. Let's go.
Right.
I mean, that's basically the Wii, it's like a video game toy. And it worked.
It works incredibly
Stupid well. And same with the Switch, it was just, instead of just being, the biggest, baddest game machine, they're like, look, but this one has a gimmick, like a toy. It's a transformer.
Right. It's got everything cool from the Wii U that nobody bought, and it's the Switch, so come get it. And people are. I mean, quite honestly, it's I think it's the console I've played the most over the past, like, many years at this point. But I
can't speak on that. I literally don't have a Switch. Here's the thing. Nintendo consoles are always for me like, I'd play them if someone would gift it to me. But like, I'm not going out of my way to buy one because there's just not enough things that interest me. Like, there's a couple of games where I'm like, sure, I could get into Fire Emblem or I could get into, whatever. But, like a couple games is just not enough for me.
I think you'd be a big Metroid guy. I think you'd be one of those.
I don't know. I mean, maybe.
I mean, Team Ninja did one of their games. It was garbage, but they did it.
True. That's the only good one.
No, I'm kind of the opposite with Nintendo. Actually, they're the one console I have zero hesitation of buying because I know eventually one of these IPs that I've been like latched onto since childhood is going to come out for it, and I'll buy it and be pissed off, but I'll still probably play it. So I don't know. Whereas
Yeah,
my PS5 has just been sitting there collecting dust since I got it.
I think I've been in a luxury position in that way where, most Nintendo IPs I don't really care about. And then, with Microsoft's whole, if it's on Xbox, it's on PC. So for me, having a PC and a PlayStation is like, I basically have access to everything that I could be interested in. So I guess I'm a bit in a luxury position there, though. Again, with this acquisition, that might change. Microsoft potentially could be a little more aggressive on the exclusive stuff. Again, as long as it's all coming to PC, I honestly don't give a shit.
Right. And like, I think this is good for all the people that are like PC master race, right? Because the more Microsoft is merging like PC gaming and Xbox gaming, the less space there is going to be potentially for a PlayStation in the future, which is what PC master race is all about. So they should be happy. Koei Tecmo, one of the few independent publishers left at this point. Yeah, absurdity. That's another thing that happened with the fallout of this. Apparently, all of the independent publishers, there was supposedly a bump in their stock prices because of this whole acquisition, because now that the question of what Sony going to do is in the air, all of the independent developers' value has gone up because Sony may have to rely on them now to fill the gaps where Activision is leaving.
Yeah, I think you have to keep in mind too that you have to keep in mind before this acquisition, like this is a huge one because it's a huge company. But Microsoft and Sony, if you go back like the last 2-3 years, they've been gobbling up a lot of developer studios.
Oh yeah.
Like just straight up being like, yeah, you're going to make PlayStation games now. And, again, I have a PlayStation, so I don't mind. But, it's, in the end, I think it's going to be a negative. Like, I think it's positive up to a certain point. Like, I don't mind there being, because here's the thing. If you have to make a game and it's like specifically made for PlayStation with a certain mindset and a certain direction, I think it does pay off in the quality. I mean, it can pay off in the quality. But if that's the only thing there is, I have an issue with that. Like, there should be a wealth of options,
Right. And I think by one hand, this might be good because I think Steam is going to be needing more competition here. So, like with this acquisition, maybe Microsoft's online offerings are going to become kind of similar to what Steam would offer, or they might start having their own exclusives. We may just end up with a PC platform war instead of a console war eventually.
Yeah, well, we've seen how well that goes. Even Epic Game Store making a little stint, PC Master Race up in arms. Still pissed about it.
Right. I think that's just the next frontier, right? And I think that's what Microsoft is probably gearing up for is, hey, the console wars are kind of over because, as we can see, Microsoft sees no value in consoles. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing the crossover with PC that they do, right? Because that's decentivizing buying their console.
Yeah,
so I think
Microsoft has clearly been playing this game of ecosystem, right? No matter if you buy the console, if you're on PC or whatever, just get into the ecosystem. And I guess mostly right now they're like, buy Game Pass. That's what they want.
Right.
They so badly want to be Netflix for games. It's honestly wild. I barely see how they're making a profit on it. I mean, sure, there were like 25 million subs to it.
Right.
Right. So that's and still a lot, but
Right. And I mean, I guess with having Activision and Blizzard, they can add something to the Game Pass without much cost to them at this point. There's still going to be a cost, but not as much cost. Yeah. I think the price of Game Pass is probably going to start skyrocketing eventually once they need to start courting these independent.
The thing with these subscriptions is as long as you can get subscribers extra with on top of how bigger it's getting, then you can keep the price low. The second the number of subscriptions starts slowing down, then you're going to have to raise the price to keep the same growth going, right?
Right.
And I think with this, I can just already imagine the play of, hey, exclusive on Game Pass, Call of Duty. You can already smell it you know?
Yep. And that's kind of one of the things I'm also wondering about Game Pass, because right now with Game Pass, you get EA stuff for free. You get
Mm.
EA stuff as part of that. And I'm kind of wondering, at what point is Microsoft going, like, is EA next? Like, is Microsoft going to eventually just purchase EA, or is EA eventually going to be like, hey, we're not going to take part in the Game Pass anymore because it's cutting our bottom line? Because they have a
Yeah.
lot of their stuff on there already, like immediately, which is kind of weird to me.
Yeah, I mean,
They haven't put
I guess it
Battlefield on
depends
yet, but
on the company. Like Ubisoft, like literally this week did it with the new Rainbow Six. It launched day one on Game Pass. But
right.
again, their goal with that game is probably we want to get people in the game and then buying microtransactions and DLC
Right.
more than buying the box price.
And I wonder if that's just the end culmination, right? Is eventually people are too busy buying Game Pass, so now all of your games are going to be free to play and just DLC
Yeah, exactly.
written, and now it's just all microtransactions. I can see the future for that, just because I think we're in a transition period for it at this point, honestly.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge unexpected play. I honestly, it's wild that Activision went for it, because like even if you look at EA, Ubisoft, other big ones, like they're a far cry from Activision Blizzard. They were on top, you know?
Right. I mean, honestly, I think if the allegations hadn't come out and they hadn't been getting such bad press, I don't think they would have sold. But I think they were kind of left with no choice, really, because I don't think they could have gotten rid of Bobby, honestly. And that's seemingly what it's going to take. They need some kind of the community has demanded a sacrifice, and if it's not Bobby, I don't think they're ever going to be happy.
Here's what I'm thinking now. Do you think it's been decided on that short term? Like this we're talking about, that's a lot of money. This has to have been, it must have been in the talks for years, right? In
Normally
some
these things
capacity,
are.
they must have been talking about this for a while.
Normally these things are, and normally you would hear about it, but
True.
it's so weird because we haven't heard anything about it until they just said, yeah, it's happening next year.
Yeah, it's like one of the biggest things ever in gaming, and it's like, yeah, it's happening. So what?
Right. I don't trust a company to be able to keep, just like I don't trust the government to keep a secret for that long. I don't trust a company to be able to do that,
Like
right?
not a single person, not a single lawyer, not a single anyone, anywhere in that whole process is like, mention something to his dog or whatever, like it.
Right. So I think it happened really, really fast, and I think it was a consequence of the pressure that they've been getting. Because again, I'm like you. In a world where there was 0% corruption that's been exposed, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. So I guess from the gaming point of view, what I hope happens is, I don't know how Microsoft handles generally in gaming, but I really hope they're going to push less for like this super profit driven model that's kind of ruined World of Warcraft, ruined a bunch of games, caused all these developers to just help with Call of Duty because that's like their huge money machine, right? Because we've seen a couple of games from Activision Blizzard that were actually really good recently, like the last couple of years, like the Spyro collection, the remake.
Right.
The Crash remake, I believe, was also Activision. The Tony Hawk remake. I'm listing a bunch of remakes, but I guess that's just coincidence. Those were really solid, well-made games, clearly with developers who loved the original, loved the project, and then, the projects get released, people love them, the gaming media loves them, and then as reward, they're like, yeah, work on Call of Duty, bitches. It's like, what? To me, that's honestly a disgrace, and I hope a lot of those developers under Activision Blizzard, I hope they get to do their own thing again. Like, for example, Raven Software. Like, that's like a classic name. They used to make like the old Rainbow Sixes and, like Jedi Knight, these old games, that I'm very fond memories of. They've been doing Call of Duty for a while now. It's like, dude, can you imagine them just doing their own thing again? Like, come on, that has to happen. That's like best case for me. Is if Microsoft just lets all these developers under the Activision umbrella, just let them do some cool shit, make their own things, maybe work on some Microsoft IPs that's been dead for a while,
Right. And I guess that's one thing that could potentially be good is maybe with Microsoft having all of these different studios now, maybe it's getting harder for them to micromanage. So maybe there will be a little bit more freedom for people to do their own stuff because I can't imagine being a CEO above all of these companies and just micromanaging that many different projects to make sure they're on task and doing the one thing we approve them for, right? That seems insane to me to
Yeah.
have that.
You can only imagine right now there's like a huge, probably some kind of task force internally in Microsoft that's just looking like all the IPs that are on the table now, all the
Right.
developers they have access to, see if there's like a match, something, maybe look at sales numbers, like maybe if they look at sales numbers and like, man, this Tony Hawk remake really did well, maybe we should do number 2 or
Right.
whatever, right? Like for sure that conversation is happening within Microsoft right now. Just looking at all, because there's a lot of IPs in both Activision Blizzard and Microsoft, to be honest, that are just not being used.
Right. And I mean, have they even announced anything for like any of the Bethesda properties that they've gotten now? Like, I guess
I
what,
don't
did we
think
get
so.
a
I don't know.
Doom since the acquisition? I think that's about it, right? We
Like
got a
what's
new
coming
Doom
up for
game.
Bethesda, like Starfield?
Right. Like that's kind of the weird part to me and what's a little scary too is like I feel like we haven't heard anything from Bethesda and we're well overdue for another Elder Scrolls that isn't Skyrim for the 1000th time,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, do we? They
Uh
keep selling.
yeah, it's true, right? Maybe we're not past it yet.
I still haven't
Uh
played it by some miracle.
I mean, at this
I
point,
own
I
it.
think I mean, what I would do is I feel like it's probably a lot harder to go through life not owning a copy of Skyrim than it is to not
Yeah.
play the copy of Skyrim you inevitably own, right?
Yeah, I don't even know if I bought it. I think it just magically appeared in my Steam list. Just it happened it was suddenly there one day. I don't even
Yeah,
know how it
absurdity.
got
Isn't
there.
Starfield coming out? So yeah, so I suppose Starfield is the next big project from Bethesda that we're waiting on. Now, what do we got here? I think it's a sign that the ratio of production cost to profit is no longer sensible for major games, hence AAA moves towards extreme consolidation under a couple of companies who can fund anything, and even those need to get consistent profit streams after release through microtransactions. Yeah, right. Like this is just I think we've been in the middle of a huge transition in gaming for a while, and I think this is just another major piece out of the Jenga tower, right? Before we are in the post-apocalyptic, we only have microtransaction games now because
Yeah,
that's
though,
the
though
only
I
way to
think
make
that's a
money.
bigger I think that's a bigger topic on its own in general because there's
Right,
so much more going on. It's more than, oh, it's more expensive now because there's also the technology
right,
part where things are going to get easier with things like, if Unreal Engine becomes even easier to develop in or something like their MetaHuman where you can just pull some sliders and boom, you have like a super high quality character. Sure, the really big AAA studios are still going to make like real intricate custom characters. But like for all the people in the crowd, just whoop some sliders and it's done. Like that's going to cut costs. So
right.
I think that's a way bigger discussion than just, oh, games are more difficult to make, so now all of a sudden it's way more expensive. I think
I also
a lot of it is marketing too. You gotta keep that in mind. A
right.
lot of these AAA games, like half of their budget gets wasted on marketing sometimes, which is crazy.
I also think they're just the AAA business is full of shit. Because what weren't they saying that the reason we didn't have any new cool games coming out is because the technology wasn't there, and now we're another gen out,
Yeah,
and we barely have anything new anyway. So it's like you guys were just bullshitting, weren't you? You had nothing, even with new technology.
yeah, yeah. I guess that kind of covers it for the
Yeah, it was a
Activision
long
Blizzard
chunk of
topic. I
time.
think we mentioned or covered most of it. To end it, let me put it this way. I'm kind of hopefully optimistic on it. Like,
Right.
it's technically a bad move. Like, I don't want to see too many of these. Like, I can't imagine like Sony buys Ubisoft. Like, once you start seeing shit like that, you're like, oh my God, no.
Right.
In this case, I'm like, I can easily see it become better for Activision than
Right.
get worse. Like, I can imagine that, but we'll see. You never know, right?
Right. And like, I guess again, just to end it off, I guess the good news is Activision Blizzard was bought out, so hopefully this means that conditions can change for the people who work there, because the old leadership was obviously at a loss for what to do, right? So
Yeah.
hopefully Microsoft can get that shit whipped up and be okay.
Yeah. So, next topic, I guess we should quickly mention the PvP social media for gamers, which that's a ride, man.
So I'm going to start this with a question. You as a gamer, what do you want in your ideal social media platform for gamers? Is this something as a gamer you've even thought was necessary?
No, I
Also, to the chat, have you guys ever heard of PvP as like the social media for gamers? Because we sure as hell didn't.
No. And the thing is, the first time I saw it was like when you added it to the list of things to cover. I read the IGN article, and honestly, it felt like it was made by IGN, because it's they quote unquote cover it, and it's straight up an advertisement on, oh, you can invest here and this and that. Like, I was waiting for the line, and you can do it with crypto. Like, it I don't know. It's so fishy to me. It's just one of those, market to gamers, but it's honestly just going to be nothing.
You didn't even look at their website, did you? Because it got even worse when you went to their website, because they had buttons everywhere for investing and sure to partner with us and get in on the ground floor. And it sounds like the next NFT conundrum, right?
Yeah,
but
I honestly think social media has gotten to a point where I feel like most existing social medias, unless they seriously fuck up, I feel like they've all pretty much got their place, You got TikTok for short clips and infinite scrolling. You got Twitter for, I guess, toxicity and text, and for dilute cosplayers, which get banned everywhere except Twitter. Like Instagram is more of the image platform, and then YouTube is videos. And I guess Twitch exists.
Ternary, no, they don't have blinking LED lights, but they do have splash art from all your favorite online video games, such as Magic the Gathering Arena, League of Legends. I don't even know what some of these games are. It looks like it's mostly Magic, honestly. So I wonder if Wizards is like in on this shit. But they're trying to market themselves as like a hub. They already have a Twitch integration, by the way. So they're trying to market themselves as like a hub to find people to play PvP game, like to play online games with. Which
is wild, because every game has their own way of. I mean, also Discord exists.
Right.
Discord let's be real. Discord is the gaming hub. Like that's exactly what it's marketed for. That's exactly what it exists for. You have servers per game, whatever you're interested in. It's accepted by most people. Pretty much everyone I know has it. So it's like, I don't know.
I guess my whole thing with Discord is, how is the discovery? Because just interacting with the Discord app, I feel like I don't have a good way of finding communities that I may be interested in.
But this is the thing for me. Are you, like, is that something you want? Like, scrolling on something and I'm like, wow, look, now I'm interested in the Call of Duty community. Like, no, usually you're interested in the game, and then you go look for the community. And because of the fact you're looking for it, there's no discovery really needed.
Well, I'm just wondering if that's something that PvP is going to facilitate, right? Is for those people, like, maybe it'll make finding the community part easier, because you won't have to search everywhere. You'll just find their PvP page or whatever, and then they'll have linked to all their official stuff. I might be sold. I might become an investor. I might throw all my NFTs at it, and I might become a partner on Twitch.
Look, all I'm saying is I got my trigger finger on right-click save as, so I'm gonna bankrupt them. All right.
The Gaming Hub, free step dodge. Yeah, the Gaming Hub, free step dodge.
Yeah. Anyway, I just
thought it was funny.
It's more of a fun joke almost. Like reading the article is just like, it's an advertisement. It's going nowhere.
I wonder how their censorship is going to be, though. Are they going to allow the gamer word to just fly willy-nilly, or what? How much of a gamer can I actually be on PvP? How toxic can we get?
Yeah, that's another thing. Isolating gamers, like that's.
Gamers deserve to be isolated.
Anyone who feels like they're being talked to by saying, "Oh, we want all the gamers." If you're like, "Yeah, they're talking to me," yeah, you're probably a piece of shit, and people don't want to hang out with you.
maybe they're hoping to pull so much business from Twitter. Maybe Twitter will actually be purged and it won't be as toxic anymore because all the gamers will go to PvP.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the best thing ever. Maybe we should invest just as like a way to cleanse the community and make the internet a safer spot at least.
Yeah. Anyway, let's pivot to the last piece of news, and I feel like we're running a bit long with these news parts, so we'll quickly go over this one. This actually happened today or like last night or whatever. Dark Souls, the PC servers have been shut down after a huge, I guess, hack has been found. I mean, the hack apparently has been known for a while now. But so I guess the story is some dude, a hacker, found a way when you're connecting to another player in PvP to be able to run code on their PC. Which is just straight up like, hey, I can just take control of your PC and do literally anything through Dark Souls PvP. Which that all alone is already like, what the fuck?
Right. That is terrifying as hell.
So now, lucky this guy is a white hacker. He's like, he found this, and he didn't use it. He was notifying, like he was trying to get a hold of From Software and like, hey, this is a big problem, and it's in literally all Dark Souls games, and presumably it's going to be in Elden Ring as well coming up. You need to fix this. They didn't respond. They didn't listen. I mean, this is the story how I read it, right? So what he started doing was just start using the hack on big live streamers who did Dark Souls PvP. And then I guess since yesterday or like today, I saw Dark Souls actually tweeted out like, hey, we shut down all the servers. We have to look into this. So I guess they finally got there, right?
Right. So my whole thing with white hat hackers is yeah, he said he was doing it to get their attention, but was he really? Or was he looking for something else? Because Titanfall came under the same kind of issue. I don't know if you had like heard about all the server problems that Titanfall
No, I don't know anything about Titanfall.
Okay. So just to put a TLDR, Titanfall, basically servers were getting attacked consistently all the time forever. And it turns out the one person who knew about it, right, was trying to get their attention to fix it, but he's the one that was creating all the problems to begin with. So it's one of those where it's like, are you saying you were doing this on purpose, or did you just get caught and now you're trying to claim you're a white hat hacker? Or are you just feeling good about how well you were doing on Dark Souls? Like
I feel this is the kind of level of hack where like if you were really doing it for malicious purposes, I mean, you could have pulled off some heinous shit.
Oh, yeah.
So, in this case, I am kind of leaning towards, I think he's honest about it. Because, like, this is, like, literally just taking control, like, just being able to run code, I guess, that's a huge thing.
Right.
That's like,
But I guess the other thing is there can't be only one person that knows about it, right? I feel like...
From what I've read, supposedly he was the one who found the hack and never shared it with anyone.
Right,
supposedly,
never shared. Right, supposedly. Again, it's hard for me to believe. I feel like a lot of the people probably have fallen victim to this, especially if it was a known issue for a while, and they probably just now started to see problems with it because of Twitch. So maybe he was being a white hat hacker, but I feel like a lot of people are probably already kind of screwed with it, right?
I mean, you kind of also have to think, like, if one person's able to figure it out, someone else probably already did.
Right.
And he might 100%. Not even be the first one who figured it out,
Right. He might be the white hat hacker because he's the first one that found it and decided to say something instead of just, oh, hey, I'm going to sell this to some organized crime and we're just going to do what we do.
All I know is I feel for whoever the network developer is at From Software right now, because he's getting this on his plate, like what, a month before Elden Ring launches? He is, if they didn't already crunch, he is crunching his ass off right now. He is fucked.
Well, I guess the good news too is they haven't confirmed it for console or anything, right? This is only affecting
No, this is
PC.
only happening on PC so far. But still, so Elden Ring is going to release on PC, so and it's literally all their online games.
I mean, worst comes to worst, they just pull the DOA 6 and don't launch the PvP for a couple weeks after Elden Ring comes
I mean,
out, right?
that's a huge PR shitstorm waiting to happen. They want to be like Elden Ring releases and it's perfect, it's God's gift to humanity, and everyone should buy it. That's the PR they want, right?
Right.
And if it's going to be like, yeah, sure, the game's great, but look, it destroys your PC, right? That's not what you want on launch. Just like DOA, you don't want, the game's fine, but where's the lobby? That's not what you want.
Right. So hopefully, if he is crunching right now, hopefully he gets it fixed before then. But other than that,
nope, you get erased.
Might just launch without PvP, right?
Yeah. Again,
I assume Dark Souls PvP wasn't bad enough on its own.
True. Yeah, I feel at least I think it is going to get fixed. At the end of the story, it's going to get fixed, probably, hopefully. To just say it's fixed and leave it, I don't know. But
they'll say it's fixed and leave it, and then FromSoft, like Ternary or like Absurdity said, FromSoft is just going to use all of our console or all of our PCs for crypto mining.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, we totally fixed it, guys. Suddenly we own 24% of crypto. Whoa. Weird how that works.
All right. So that was the news. Let's get into the topic of the show, which is, are fighting games actually harder to learn or to get good at as other games?
How much Dogecoin do you guys have? I have 0, thankfully.
Yeah, I have also 0.
Dude, I especially don't want to get into it because the US's tax laws around like crypto is stupid right now, so I'm over it.
Yeah, I think here most banks just don't allow you to do anything with it, so they're kind of fucked anyway.
The best option. But yeah, fighting games.
So yeah,
Forge, why don't you start off, because you have a more concrete mindset on this, and you need to try to convert me.
So I think before we get in, I want to be clear that I'm comparing it to other multiplayer games, because I think arguing about this over single player is kind of irrelevant. I mean, me as like a 10-year-old kid could beat arcade modes in fighting games without knowing a single combo frame or whatever. So I don't think single player is part of the discussion. So also comparing it to single player games, like I think that's a bit, beside the issue.
I think it's safe to say too that if you're playing it at a competitive level, you are legitimately playing the game at a different level than somebody who's just one-manning their way through.
So the idea is, there's this, in my eyes at least, there's this misconception that learning a fighting game is like this crazy, insane task, and that you're better off playing whatever, Call of Duty or something else, right? And I think this is mostly just, like the idea, the image, the misconception that's just, like being whatever you call it in English, like it's being, like just people keep saying it without actually thinking about, is this true? And it's become this urban legend almost, And it's also something that, like fighting game players themselves who are good, they kind of want to show off that way. And they're like, oh, but this is super hard and I did it, so that's part of it as well. But to me, the reason why I personally think it's kind of just the same as any other game, I think it's just the way fighting games are makes it seem like you're not making progress or not having the same experience. So I guess the obvious comparison would be like a first-person shooter. Maybe you're playing in team, which means your team can carry you to a win and it feels like you're doing good, but maybe you were just as trash as you always were, right? Maybe you get like a couple of headshots, but you still lose the match. But those headshots felt like you were doing something good. Even just in general, you start the game and you run around in a map. Maybe you're trying to find cover and you got shot. At least you've done that part. You had some tactical thinking about it, whatever. Compared to a fighting game, it's just the match starts and boom. And if your opponent knows a little bit about the game, or even if they're just like, picking Christie and mashing PPPPP, whatever, you're going to get overwhelmed instantly and you're going to feel like you haven't done anything at all. And you lose. And it's like, wow, this sucks. And now I have to learn this entire mountain of shit to feel like I can do something. But the reality is, like, for example, I've been playing Rainbow Six Siege a lot. I I've legit played like 60 to 100 hours now. I am noob. Like, I don't know shit about the game. There's so much going on. And sure, I can get some kills. I can win matches. But I don't have a clue in reality. Like, I couldn't lead a team. Like, not even close. I'm just following along, doing the couple things I know. But, you know, that's just, it feels like
I have
you're
a question
making
about
progress.
that.
Whereas a
How,
fighting game, you're not thinking, if you lose a match, you're not thinking like, oh yeah, at least I got that combo, or at least I blocked that annoying low once, like that is the same as getting a headshot. That is the same as winning one round because your team carried you, getting that combo the first time, that is the progress, but it doesn't feel like progress. So yeah, of course, if I'm just going to look at, like Rainbow Six and I'm like, yeah, if I shoot all my teammates and then solo an entire match, perfect, destroy the entire team, that's the moment when I'm getting good at the game, right? Sure. Give me a couple years, right? Of course, it's going to feel like this insane task. I think that's kind of where it comes down with fighting games. It's just the feeling of progression isn't there. Even if you look at just in general how those games are made, again, comparing to shooters, most of them have like, even if you lose, even if you got a couple of kills, you get some kind of experience, some kind of battle pass points, whatever, to work towards the next reward. So even if you've been losing all this time, there's something at the end of your game session where you're like, oh, but now I got this new skin, now I got this new thingy, now I got whatever, right? Which is also something that really doesn't exist in fighting games, at least as far as I know. Just your rank, I guess, is something you get. So that's kind of like mainly why I think that if you boil it down and compare it properly to other games, I think fighting games are just as easy, or reverse, I think other games are just as hard to get to that level at. What do you think?
All right. I think a lot of... So, I'm kind of in a neutral ground here, right? Leaning more towards... I think fighting games are legitimately a bit more complicated. But I think where it's coming from, for me, it may also be that I haven't put as much work into in getting competitive as something else. Well, I guess card games maybe is something I've tried to get competitive at over like a fighting game, right? The most work I've ever put into becoming competitive is something I think has been a fighting game. And I think that's why, to me, it feels like it is harder than other games. So when you were talking here, I just had a couple questions because I feel like some of what you were saying could also kind of support why fighting games might be harder too, right? So one of the first questions I had for you when you were talking was getting better at Rainbow Six Siege. How much have you gone to like research how to get better, like what optimum loadouts are and all of that? And how easy was it for you to find that information?
Well, in a way it was easy because I'm used to it from fighting games. So basically it's exactly the same, You go onto YouTube or you look at a stream or whatever, and then first you have to figure out, is this video even relevant to the current patch? Because maybe it's out of date, And then it's just looking for whatever's relevant. Because Siege in particular, I think, is one of the harder shooters out there when it comes to just the amount of stuff you need to know. There's so many maps, there's so many different characters, each with their own skills, each with their own counterplays in a specific map, because, some characters in certain maps have like a really specific overpowered way of, attacking or whatever. So, I don't know. There is a huge community surrounding that game, so all the information is available, but I kind of, again, I'm used to it from fighting games, so I kind of understand how at first you kind of have to find not the information, but which information is relevant to you at that point, There's no need to go look for, like this super specific combo in a fighting game when you're just learning general combos. And at the start, you just want to get a combo that works most of the time and get that one down consistent, and then you can start mixing it up. So from that angle, it's kind of been difficult because, again, there's so much going on in that game. And, you know, I'm just taking it step by step. There's still so much to learn, you know.
So how much? So I guess it sounds like you've just been applying a lot of your fighting game,
Yeah,
knowing how to get good at fighting games to
Yep.
just like learning how to get good at Rainbow Six. Also, hi Nian. Called out Christy like that. I likes it. All right, Justin. So you're saying it's harder to reach discrete moments that feel like progress because the smallest unit is a whole match.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of correct. Like, again, in a fighting game, the win or the loss at the end of the match kind of usually, for most people, determine if they did good or not good. And they don't look inside the match what happened specifically. And it's not only if you did something good, it's just in general playing, right? Because let's not forget, not everyone is aiming to be the best player, to be super competitive. Same with Siege. I could be completely content right now. I can play matches. I know generally what the basic strategies are, and I can shoot people, right? And, you know, other people can be better than me and maybe have better strategies, sure. But to just play the game, I'm fine because I can get wins, right? And in fighting games, that's just a little bit more difficult, I guess, because the win is like, yeah, this very small specific thing. Whereas in a shooter, you know, there's all these things because a match is just so much more than just beating each other up, I guess, at face value. That it feels like you can get a lot more gameplay without actually getting a win at the end of the story.
What I would say that the fact that fighting games are more of a one-on-one thing than you having a team to help
Yeah.
carry you
That's
would
definitely
be
one of those
a
things where,
reason
yeah,
why a fighting game would be harder than any first-person shooter, really, because unless you're playing like a
Warzone.
free-for-all, yeah, like a free-for-all, potentially Warzone, though I believe they go in with teams in Warzone in a competitive setting, so to speak. I think you pretty much, the competitive setup is always with a team.
Yeah, but that's another thing I kind of want to talk about. I feel like with fighting games, almost instantly people go to, okay, but how do you get competitive? How do you get good enough to be competitive? While again, for many of these other games, being competitive is barely something people talk about. You know, usually they just want to be able to play the game. And for a fighting game, to be able to play the game and have fun and just get a couple wins without actually being like top whatever in your region or what, like that is way more obtainable than most people think. I'm pretty sure of that, actually.
You think it's easier to get decent at a fighting game than it would be just a shooter to be better than like the
I think
people in
it's
your
the
area?
same. I think
The same.
I just think the goalpost for fighting games lies way further ahead. Like whenever people think about getting good at a fighting game, they instantly think of getting like highly competitive. While for shooters, most people, they just want to kick back and shoot some people. Right?
So wouldn't that mean that the shooter's easier then, since I guess the pressure to be competitively good is less? Like,
Is
if
it the
you're having
pressure, or is it just that's what people say and it actually isn't true? Because that's the thing. If you want to get super competitive in shooters, that's going to take at least the same amount of time, training, strategy, whatever, learning all the details, learning all the, because if you're going to argue that, for example, learning frame data is something the average player needs to do for fighting games, I think you're already going too far.
I guess you kind of answered that, but we had a funny kind of debate about this at one point I had with some other folks. Where do you stand on how necessary frames are for a fighting game?
Again, I think it depends on what level you want to play at. I think if you're at a certain point, if you want to get more competitive, there's going to be a part where knowing frame data is just gonna accelerate your learning.
Is there something like frame data that you've had to learn for Rainbow Six?
I
Like
guess
some
the
kind of
only thing
concept?
comparable is just in general the meta strategies per map, right? Because there's so many ways to do things in that game, but there's like a couple of like per map there's like certain routes like an attacker or a defender always takes, because if the defender doesn't defend against it, that attacking route becomes like super optimal. And if you don't know those things, like you already have to do certain things because of it's that map. And I guess that is like the closest to frame data.
Wouldn't that be more akin to like learning the stages in a fighting game though? Like, because in some fighting games, obviously in a lot of fighters, they've taken out the one of my main problems with competitive fighting games is they've taken out the intricacies of stages. It's part of why I like DOA though, is because they
Yeah.
generally keep that in. So like I would say for like a game like DOA, wouldn't that be more equivalent to just learning your stage combos for DOA and not necessarily a completely separate knowledge base that you'd have to figure out and do math?
I don't know. I was just thinking more of like the breadth of all the things you have to learn, and specifically comparing the Siege. I think just there's again so many maps. There's like 40 plus different characters, each with own abilities that open up new strategies in that map. Just that wealth of information you need to learn is more akin to the wealth of frame data you need to learn, compared to like the stages in DOA or whatever, like, or stage combos. That's like, if you're playing your main character, that's like what, 3-4 extra combos you need to learn on top of your normal combos. I don't think that's even comparable to the frame data. Frame data is a huge task if you're new to it.
Right. And I guess that's just one of those things that I've always seen as like a complication for fighting games, because
Sure.
there seems to be a huge divide for people that think frame data is worthwhile and people that think it's not. I haven't seen a lot of people that have gotten really good that think frame data is completely worthless, because obviously it's the way the game works.
Here's the thing,
you
though.
need to
Here's
know.
the thing. I think this is where people talking about it is more nefarious than it actually is. Frame data, if you think about it, if you break it down, what frame data is just a way to predict your options, on block, on attack, or whatever, right? Technically, if frame data does not exist, or if you have no access to it, technically you could go into training mode, set the opponent to do a certain string, block it, and then just try all your attacks one by one to see which one you can attack with, which one not. And that's how you figure out how something's unsafe or not. Right? You could do that literally for every attack in every game with every character and have the same result as learning the frame data. But that's infinitely more work. So I think frame data at some point just becomes a more efficient way of learning those things. But again, up until a certain point, you're probably better off, instead of just starting to learn frame data, just be like, oh, this attack is fucking me over. Let me hop into training mode and see what my options against that attack are. You don't need to learn frame data to learn that one thing. Technically, what you're doing could be solved with frame data.
Right.
But I don't, again, at a certain level, once you really want to get into the nitty gritty and figure everything out, you kind of just want to learn frame data because it's so much more efficient than doing everything one by one.
Absurdity brings up a good question here. Would you say that fighting game skills are less transferable, as in you can learn one shooter and transfer it to another, but being very good at Lei Feng specifically might not help you in Virtua Fighter? I think
that's partially true. I think there's definitely skills between fighting games that transfer, certain concepts, like the idea of whiff punishing, neutral, like all those things. They change per game, but the concepts are kind of the same. Sure, you need to learn new combos. You need to learn the game mechanics specifically. And I guess in many shooters, no matter what the extra mechanics are, 9 out of 10, if you can aim at a head, you can probably do something good. So I think on that end, shooters probably do carry over a little bit more. But, then again, there are game-specific mechanics you need to deal with, especially these days, every shooter has, like, specific characters with specific skills. Those are different per game, and you need to learn the intricacies and the impact of those and team compositions, whatever, if you want to really go that far.
But I wonder if that is actually harder than potentially transferring. Sorry, I hit my table, so my camera's wigging out. I wonder if that's actually harder, though, than going into a fighting game. Because I have a friend who spent an inordinate amount of time on Modern Warfare 2 back in the day. And he's probably the best at every first-person shooter my group of friends plays, right?
Yeah.
Because I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is the object of the game is to point and shoot. And as long as you generally know how it works, you're going to be okay. I don't know if the specific game mechanics in different shooters necessarily change it up enough to where it's going to be that much of a challenge.
Sure.
And I think in that regard,
that is, of course, a shooter specific thing. That's kind of like, I don't know. I guess it's because fighting games in general, even moving in fighting games, is so different between games. Right. Where in a first person shooter, usually, there's some kind of homogeny between them. So I guess on that front, I could agree. Yeah, I do agree. But then again, you can look at other games, like let's say MOBAs. Again, nobody's ever saying, oh, it's way too difficult to get into those games, at least in the same way as fighting games. Yet, if I look at a stream of someone playing MOBAs, I don't even know what I'm looking at. It's like it's looking at Guilty Gear if you've never played it. It's exactly the same. It's just stuff happening on screen, a lot of words you've never heard of. And here we go, people partying in the jungle. I don't know what's going on.
Right. I don't know. I guess I kind of have experience with MOBAs too. So I feel like the main hurdle for learning a MOBA like League for me was mostly just learning what items did and basically just memorizing a bunch of information, which to me, I feel like memorization is a little easier than actual being able to make your fingers do it. I can't think of a more elegant way to put that right now. So I don't know. I mean, you do have skill shots occasionally in MOBAs, but I feel like overall they're a little easier to get a handhold on than like figuring out how to make your way through a fighting game.
Sure.
Shooters and MOBAs are team-based, though. I think part of fighting games is getting used to each specific opponent and the reads, whereas the games are based more on mechanical mastery. Yeah, that's kind of what I was kind of touching on earlier, right? Is I think if your game is team-based, it automatically just makes it a little bit easier because you do have people you can kind of lean on to carry you.
Yeah, there's a carry potential, right?
Right, and they'll pick up on something maybe faster than you would. But like in a fighting game, if you're strictly one-on-one, you may just be completely oblivious. And unless you go back and watch the tape, you're not going to know. During that match.
That's kind of my point, though, with the whole team thing, right? You individually are probably just as shitty at the shooter as you are at fighting games. Except in the team-based shooter game, you don't experience the fact that you're shitty. Because maybe you get the win because of your team. Or maybe you get a random kill somewhere, even though you got lucky. And it wasn't skill at all. Whereas in a fighting game, getting lucky with those kind of things or just having the feeling of accomplishment, even though, maybe you're not good at all, it just doesn't happen, right? So,
and I think that's
does that mean the game is really harder, or are you just more confronted with the reality, and like the shooters kind of hide the reality of your skill level more?
Right. And I think that's ultimately an argument for why shooters are easier, right? Is because your team can make up for your deficiencies. And that inherently makes it easier, right? Like you could have this deficiency, but your team works and knows to work with you on that. So it may never come up, honestly. You may never have to improve that part because your team has your back. So that's just one less thing you got to worry about. I mean, that's why they do practices and everything. Ideally, you would know everything, right, and be the best you can be, but you don't have to. So there's really no need to do that. In a fighting game, it's you. You have to learn how to do these things or you're never going to be good.
Yeah.
And I think that's one area where it is harder to do a fighting game because it's just you, baby. Unless you're playing like Team Smash, but that's a whole nother conversation of if Smash is a real fighting game or not.
Yeah.
Certainly takes
I think
longer
where I fall down on it is like, you see all these developers these days for fighting games trying to make games quote unquote easier for, people, easier to get into, easier, and whatever mechanic most fighting game people don't seem to agree with it. And, the argument I'm making is I don't think fighting games need to be easier. I just need to think the progression or like the feeling of progression in the games needs to be addressed in some way. Because just saying, yeah, you have training mode to figure shit out and then you go online. I don't think that's enough anymore. I think there needs to be, I don't know. I don't have the solution, unfortunately.
Right.
Otherwise, I'd be off starting a game company. But I think
aren't you trying to do that?
There has to be a way of, having people like still feel like they're making progress, still feel like they want to continue and have fun with the game, even though they're technically losing in matches.
Right. And I think that's also just part of, I think, why fighting games could be considered harder is because you don't have, it's not as easy to pick up a fighting game and learn it in that regard because you aren't rewarded very well. Honestly, I think DOA did a great job with DOA Quest in that regard because you had all those challenges where you just had to do this weird, complicated thing with a character, and then you got, whatever. Was it like costume pieces and stuff like that?
I mean, I think I've even made a video about this before. I think DOA Quest is probably the biggest wasted opportunity in DOA 6 because just because of the one DOA quest where there's like an optional objective of like, hey, beat all these characters with Raidu without getting hit at all. And to me, that's like, ooh, that flips the script on how to play the game, on how to fight in such a, like, it's difficult, right? It's sometimes random, because AIs are AIs and they don't really, act like a normal human being would in a fighting game. But that to me is like, ooh, you could take that idea and just make a bunch of missions that you could just play them, for a couple of coins, but you have like this special objective which transforms the game. And maybe through that, maybe like, oh, win this match only with holds, kind of to force you to learn the mechanics of holds. And, in that way have more ways of getting good at the game than just grind online and, take the L's.
Right. And I think people actually play DOA Quest. Yeah, absurdity. Honestly, I think DOA Quest is a great thing for a new fighting game player to play because as Mystic Forge was just saying, it puts you in these situations that may come up later that at least gets you thinking about it in a different way. And it may help improve your game.
I mean, to be real, most people play DOA Quest because that was the fastest way to unlock costumes at the start until they changed the numbers.
Until they made it too easy to do that. But no, I think until fighting games start implementing a better way to learn, I think they will continue to be harder than other games. Just because I feel like other games are more conducive to teaching you how to play, whether it be team-based, so you have your team to help you, or again, I feel like shooting skills transfer a lot better than my ability at Hitomi doesn't really transfer over to Guilty Gear Strive as May because there's not much I can transfer there.
I feel like what you're saying is kind of proving me right, where fighting games aren't actually more difficult. There's just not the same tools to get to an equivalent level compared to other games as easy.
And
so and what I'm saying is games mechanically are that much more insanely complex as other games. Fighting games are just, I don't know, I feel maybe they're a little bit stuck in their ways. Maybe that's what it is. Again, I think obviously the not being in teams, not having certain mechanics just very easily transfer from game to game definitely makes the initial hump more difficult. That I'm definitely going to agree on. Just booting up a fighting game and playing for the first time, even if you've played other fighting games, can be a nightmare. If I boot up King of Fighters, game over. I know fighting games. I probably know the steps I need to take to get good at the game. I'm going to suck, I'm going to suck hard. And Rainbow Six Siege, sure, I had no strategies. I didn't know what I was doing. But if I catched someone from behind and he didn't see me, I could shoot him, I knew exactly how that works. You click, you shoot, boom.
Right. And that's kind of what my point is, right? Is I feel like fighting games are more complicated now. I feel like and just if you're just going to ask the question, do you think fighting games are harder to learn than other games? I would say yes, but they don't have to be. And I don't think we've reached the point where developers or the community at large has really reached out and made it easier, right? So I think it is harder, but it doesn't necessarily need to be.
Yeah, so I guess it's more of a semantics problem. Because, when people,
Right.
because that's the initial question comes from the idea when people talk online, they're like, Mo, fighting games are so hard, right? Oh, it's insane. And I guess when people say that, it's kind of the same as when people say this game is dead. It's like, but what exactly
Right.
do you mean? It's such a vague statement. It could mean anything. It could mean I can't get matchmake within the minute, it's dead. Or it could mean like, hey, there's like one player on Steam and I'm logged in. So, it could be, I think it's kind of on that same level where when people say fighting games are super difficult to get into, you don't know. Do they mean mechanically? Do they think combos are too hard to input? Or do they actually mean just, the progression to getting good is just a nightmare? And I guess my idea of going into this topic was I feel the mechanical part of it is the same as any other game. But the fighting games themselves just don't facilitate getting good at that mechanics as well as other games. And maybe it's inadvertently that shooters just happen to play alike, because I'm sure you can make a shooter where other FPSs, the skill set doesn't transfer over at all. If you make, aiming upside down or what, I don't know, if you change something about it in some way, maybe the crosshair is gone. I don't know. I'm just saying something, right? You can change things up. And again, the team thing, is it by design to make people, to get easier into those games, or is it just happen to be that way? And
right. I think that might be part of it too, right? Is I feel like it behooves shooters to be similar, just because when people come over to your game and they're already good at it, they're going to want to keep playing.
Yeah.
And I think fighting games have this weird egocentric thing about them where everybody tries so hard to be good at them that when you make it slightly easier, suddenly your game's garbage. And it's like, that's not.
Maybe we just figured out why people love tag mode so much in DOA. Because you don't want to be alone, you want to have some broken infinite combos with your friends.
Right. And I mean, I feel like that could be a whole conversation too, because one of my buddies, we were talking about the new Riot fighting game that's going to be coming out, right? And what are they going to do to make it interesting and to take off as big as like League of Legends, et cetera, et cetera. And one of his comments that I never thought about was fighting games aren't ever going to be that big because they're not team-based. Because when you have a team, you have more quote-unquote characters that you can latch onto as a viewer, and you have teams that you can have as your favorite, instead of fighting games where it's everybody's basically just the same sweaty nerd that you latch onto or don't. And I think not having this conversation, I think there is something to that. A team makes a game easier to learn, one, and two, like playing with friends is just more fun than playing by yourself, and it makes it more rewarding.
Yeah, kind of talking about this makes me realize pretty much all first-person shooters these days, or I guess most esports games in general, are all team-based. You know, shooters, by the way, the standard used to be like things like Quake, Unreal Tournament.
Right.
That was solo play, and, those games were fucking difficult. Even if you came from another shooter, you would also just lose nonstop at the start. But again, that kind of goes to my point. I think mechanically, all games are, at least competitive games, they're all just kind of difficult to increase your personal skill as. I think it's just up to the game developers to find ways where people keep playing. Because again, the more you play, the more you're going to get good. Even if you're not actively training, if you play more, you're going to pick up stuff. So I guess it's up to the developers to just figure out ways, maybe team-based stuff, maybe better tutorial type shit. Though honestly, I generally think, separate tutorials, I don't know. I feel like it has to be in the game, like in a native way, I guess.
Right. And again, that's why I'm going to continue harping on DOA Quest, because when I played that, like, DOA 6 is the first time I've ever tried to be competitive at DOA, and going into DOA Quest and having all of those things there to teach me the weird nitty gritty mechanics that I've never thought of or picked up in a game was really helpful.
Yeah.
And I think we just need more tools like that to get people's brains going on what it means to actually play a fighter, instead of just, you need to learn all your moves, you need to learn your combos, and you need to know the frame data. Because at the end of the day, that's still not going to help you when you get in there and a situation you've never seen in your life comes up, right?
True.
That you're going to have no idea how to deal with until you grind it out. And I think DOA Quest did a good job of bridging that gap a little bit by introducing these weird, complex interactions and helping you get over it.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I think fighting games are harder to learn just right now because the resources aren't there. And the fighting game community hasn't made any real effort to want to put it out there. Like, we have content creators and stuff, but whenever I watch a video about like how to play a game, it doesn't go over the weird nitty gritty one-off situations you're going to come to. It's all just, these are your combos that you need to use, just go. And They don't give you the context as to why you would want to use these. And I think it's just, again, part of the FGC's massive ego is they don't want to make it easy for people because they work so hard. Why don't you just do it, scrub?
True.
It's not that hard.
I had to pay off my student loan, so why don't you?
Yeah.
Basically that argument. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we got to a logical conclusion now. That basically when someone says fighting games are too hard, it kind of is too vague. And then if you look at it from, they actually... So I guess you kind of converted me in the sense that I'm going to say no, they are more difficult to learn. Not because of the game being more difficult necessarily, but just because of how it's set up to keep playing, Because Ike says an interesting thing. Unlocking new characters used to be fun in fighting games until they all unlock by default. I think that's definitely part of it, Having characters to unlock kind of forced you to put more time into the game, even if you weren't playing top level or whatever. You put more time into. It's kind of like the whole sunken cost thing. But yeah, you were exposed to more situations before you even got to, unlocking all characters.
Right.
And that's definitely something that's gone these days, right?
Right, because I think fighting games have chased the esport the competitive esport community to their disadvantage at this point, because now that's at the forefront of what they're making, instead of figuring out, hey, how can we actually make this game be easy to pick up and good for new players? And whenever they introduce an idea, when a company does decide to do that and they introduce the idea, they get shouted down because the rest of the community is butthurt that they had to pay their student loans and these new people don't.
Yeah. Honestly, I think what would be a good idea in fighting games, if anyone here watches that's developing a fighting game, feel free to steal this, right? But imagine if fighting games had some sort of progression, like a battle pass, right? You just have like a bar with experience or battle points, whatever you want to call it, and there's like unlocks, maybe new costumes, the ones you can buy if you want to, but maybe if you just do the battle pass thing, you can unlock them as well, right? That kind of stuff. And then, you get about a bit of points by just playing and whatever. But then there's also like these weekly missions. How pretty much every shooter these days has those kind of things, like weekly challenge, right? And then those challenges, you make tutorials. You're like, oh, for this challenge, like block X amount of lows. And it's like, so you're going to force people to do specific actions to, kind of make them learn things on purpose without them realizing they're actually learning something, and they're just progressing their battle pass. I think that's always key in games, and it's always something I found lacking in fighting games. Other than your own desire to get good, there's not much reason to play a fighting game. Unless you really want that rank, there's no reason to keep playing. However, for example, again, I'm playing Rainbow Six Siege. Even if I lose a match, at the end of the match, it says like, boom, this is your experience points, your renown, where you can buy new characters you haven't unlocked yet, or new outfits, or whatever. And then there's the battle pass as well, which also has separate points, and like it always says at the end, like, oh, you gained this amount of points because it's a loss. If you win, it's more. And it's like it kind of forces you and reinforces the idea of, yeah, you could have gotten more if you try harder, you know? But it still gives you something. And at the end of the day, even if I lost like 10 matches in a row, I don't feel like I wasted my time. I think that's a big issue with fighting games, because you can play hours and turn off your PC, console, whatever, and feel like you've done nothing.
Right. You just lost match after match and you have nothing to show for it except your shitty win-loss ratio.
Exactly.
I mean, DOA would at least reward you coins for outfits, but
yeah, for like the month it mattered.
Yeah. Right, but they tweaked it so much that it didn't even matter for a while.
Yeah, again, with the danger of going into a different topic, I think free-to-play would fix so many things in fighting games unironically, you know?
Now, I don't stand behind battle passes per se, because those are shyster as hell, but definitely having goals weekly is something you need.
Yeah, maybe a better example is like in the new Rainbow Six Extraction, where progression is just a general, you know, whatever you do, every kill you get in, like, it's a PvE game, so like every zombie you kill, every objective you clear, every whatever, and every win you get, it just progresses your general account progression, and you unlock, you know, new skins, new characters. You know, half of the characters are locked in that game, and you unlock them, if you can imagine that, right? You know,
in this day and age?
Yeah. And like, you even unlock new maps in the progression, right? So it feels good. It feels fun. You kind of want to keep going, you know? Right. Because you know that next thing is around the corner. And that's just a in-game, you know, not battle pass, not whatever, right? So, I definitely
Smash
think...
is 90%. Again, Ternary, that's a whole nother can of worms about is Smash a fighting game or not.
Smash is kind of like, the way people play it competitively, I would say it's a fighting game. I would count it as that, but it's definitely something different than the majority of other fighting games, you know?
I mean, I'm going to say it's a fighting game because it's the one that draws the most people to fighting game tournaments, so... True. In reality, it's the only real fighting game. But anyway, that's a conversation we can have at some other time, or not. So I don't care.
I guess, conclusion, they aren't actually more difficult, but the way they're set up make it more difficult. I guess that's the concise conclusion.
The social structure of how fighting games work makes it just more difficult. So
in the off chance that anyone here in chat has never played a fighting game because it's too intimidating, don't feel like it, you know, just give it a shot, and keep in mind that winning the match does not necessarily mean like that's the only way to get good, right? The only way to improve.
Unfortunately, we got to set our own goals for matches, and if that's pull off this combo, that's a good enough goal for a match, even if you lose.
Yes. Even if it's just, you know, I want to block this annoying move. That's something so small, but could definitely be a goal, right?
Set goals for yourself, because the game sure as hell won't.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. The game is not going to show you what to do or what the goals are. You're going to have to make that shit up on your own, unfortunately. Yeah, good shit.
Alrighty, that covers a good combo. Everybody, I hope you had fun. I hope we learned something and grew as people today.
Yeah, and speaking of setting goals, I'm going to be less lazy and make sure I make a thumbnail and make everything ready to upload this podcast to YouTube, because I promised it last week, 2 weeks ago actually, and I straight up, the funny thing is, literally the day after we did the previous podcast, the video was up and everything on YouTube. Literally the only thing is the thumbnail, which I've just put off for 2 weeks. I mean, it's in my head, but I haven't really sat down and actually tried to hammer out an idea, so I'm definitely going to make work of that.
Is the video live? Because can't you just update the thumbnail later when you think of something?
Sure, but that's not how the algorithm works. That's not how the algorithm works. You know?
Damn algorithms.
That initial hour, unfortunately, is very, very determining. But yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. So don't worry if you've missed the previous one or if you miss any future ones. They are going to be on YouTube. Just, give me a break.
I think the previous one is also still on your Twitch for now.
For now, for sure. Yeah. For sure. So yeah, good shit. That concludes today's podcast. We will be back in 2 weeks with a new topic. We have a couple topics ready to rock and roll. Do we want to already commit to one, or should we leave the audience in,
What do we got? What are the ones that we haven't used yet?
I think for now, we still have the free-to-play for fighting games topic. Just in general, would that be a good thing? What's positive, negative?
Right.
And also, how can DOA as a fighting game franchise become accepted in the FGC? If that's even something we want to tackle.
I feel like it's something we should tackle at some point.
True.
If I thought the group I would ask chat what they would want to hear if they would participate in a survey or something.
Or if there's another topic you think would be interesting, That
is also an idea.
We're all ears.
I gotta think we can hit up another DOA topic since we did just a general FGC topic.
How can DOA become accepted in the FGC?
Yeah. Be less casual, apparently.
Yeah. It's too hard. And too much volleyball.
Yep.
Alright, good shit. Let's wrap this puppy up. So yeah, like I mentioned, in 2 weeks, we'll be back. Podcast number 3. We'll hit the DOA topic again. Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you had a good time. The videos will be up on YouTube, I promise, but don't ask for it. And yeah, tomorrow is the next stream of me personally. I don't know, Seagull, you were on a break, I guess?
Yeah, I'm kind of on hiatus now, but I should probably come back relatively soon. I'll be on sometime.
I mean, there's no, how do you say it? Like, no obligation, right?
It's not how I make my money right now, so I'm not on any particular schedule. But just follow me and I'll show up at some point. I promise.
Alright, good shit. So yeah, this time I actually added all the socials beneath us. So, if you're interested in me and you're here for some reason and you don't know me, whatever, or Seagull, the links. So yeah, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.